Hi, and welcome to the Fulfilled Truth podcast. This is the place where we have conversations about the uncomfortable path that people might take to get to a wealthier life. Today, I have the pleasure of having Bryan Escudero from First Gen Foundations. Um, Really interesting, gentleman. That of course, full disclosure, this is the first time we talked, but I've been following through LinkedIn, and I really think he's got a really cool story to share, especially with his company and reaching out to the first generation people that live in this country. So, Brian, welcome to our podcast, and why don't you just do a quick introduction? Let us know about you.
Great. Thanks so much for having me, Mario. I kind of took the long path to finish school. I'm an executive in a big media company. Been there for about 25 years. Ins and out of college. And when I was able to get my bachelor's degree, I finished it up, and then it was okay, what's next, right? So, was it going to be a master's degree or real estate? And they were both about $50,000. I figured, a master's degree would
Wow.
take me about $50,000 in 3 years, and then I figured in 6 months and $50,000, I can figure out if real estate is really a thing. And so, I can become obsessive with certain things, and so I jumped into real estate, devoured books, podcasts, interviews, articles, all that stuff, and I saw that it was real, and I was like, okay, let's take a leap into this. Spoke about it with my wife, and as I started doing it, we started realizing, this is a thing that can really help people grow their money. So someone like us, my parents, they immigrated from Colombia 55 years ago. And the kids, we're all professionals. We have our jobs, and they were busy building our foundation here in this country, and so they gave us the ability, to work hard and to learn things that would help us live. And we see a lot of people like us, have some moderate success, right? Some money saved up, but just don't really have the knowledge. They didn't come from their parents or their grandparents to know how to build on that foundation that they had. So we like to take the time to talk to people about it. There's a lot of fear in that world, and so we take the time to meet with people, talk with them. I posted about it this week. The highest compliment, and the highest compliment for someone that's raising capital is return investors. And so even more than a referral, when I have someone that's with me in their third or fourth deal, it helps us know that we're doing something right. And so, as we educate people and we spend time with them, it's been something that has been great for us. We're now in 360 doors. We're $36 million AUM, and so it hasn't been all unicorns and rainbows, right? There's a lot of hard times, and I know that's what you like to talk about on the podcast. So, I'm here to be open about that, and just to be a resource to anyone that might have any questions.
That's awesome. It's really, really cool, and I really like how you talked about the education component of your company. So, just to clarify, so you are a syndicator, correct?
Yeah, we're syndicators. We do have some passive investments, but we're syndicators. So we're GPs
Oh,
on a few projects, and then we JV with some folks, and then we do have some passive investments.
okay. And then, in addition to that, you also do the education component, right?
Yeah, so we like to walk people through. I mean, being around a lot of capital raisers, there's a lot of talk of 30-minute conversation, no more than 3 minutes over, you go on to the next one. We don't follow that rule, right? We sit down and we'll have multiple conversations. Most of our investors, not all of them, but a good portion of them, they haven't been investing for 30 years. And so, we give them a little bit of time. And we have a saying that we'll grow slower, we'll grow less, but we'll grow right. We want to make sure that people understand what they're investing. I've had people like, here's X money, and I'm like, wait, I want you to understand what the investment is. And sometimes they don't really care, but I have to sleep at night, right? And I gotta know that they know what they're getting into. And so we take time to, what kind of questions should you be asking your sponsors before you invest with them? We go over terminologies. We have a glossary of terms. We go over different rules that we use when we invest. We like to be transparent with our process and why we invest in something. And so it takes time. Again, I think we've if we didn't care about that, we could have grown faster. But the reality is, I still have a mother and a father that that I got to look at when I go to their house. there's a Lord above that is watching what we do, and so we got to honor all of that. And we take care of other people's money more than we do our own. So yeah.
That's pretty smart, and thank you for that. So, you are an entrepreneur, and I know you still have you're a vice president, in a media company out of, I think you guys are, Univision is out of Miami, right? Are they in Florida? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's important.
And so you have a dual role, which is really interesting because you're in essence of working two jobs. And what a lot of people think, they have this, I don't know if you call it a dream or a vision, that entrepreneurs are walking around flush with cash, driving their Bentleys, and going to their $10 million homes. And I like the fact that you actually have the two jobs, So um, I know the goal for you is to educate people, and obviously the second goal is to, have a specific amount of financial independence, right? What would you say? How would you say the beginnings of your journey towards financial independence?
I mean, look, I've been working since I was 13, right? And so, um, part of it has been losing the fear of working, right? And I know that it's very difficult nowadays for people coming out into this new workforce. It's different than it was when I was coming up. I feel bad for people that just have way too many options, right? They have the world in front of them and they know the whole world because the internet has opened it up to them. In my case, it was, I remember being 15, working in a factory, bloody hands, and seeing all of my uncles and people that were now my age, just exhausted. And there was a moment where I even kind of mumbled, I'm like, man, one of my goals in life is going to be to have soft hands. And so that was that was the dream, right? Soft hands. That was the dream at 15. And so when I got into media, um, I wasn't afraid because I had done that. When I started in media, I wasn't afraid of doing anything, right? And and really, like, one of the superpowers of the immigrant family is, the unknown, right? We sat with our parents and our grandparents a lot and just heard the stories of, the trials that they had to face when they came to this country. And so for us, at least for me and my siblings, there was never really uh that thing that would hold us back, right? I was dumb enough to try. And so,
Good.
I tried to learn how to edit. And then when I was a good editor, then I was like, okay, I tried to learn how to be a supervisor and then a manager and then a director. And then, I have no business doing what I do, but the reality is, if I worked hard, while I was doing it. And so, I tell people that the day is longer than we give it credit for. So we can do a lot more things. I don't think two jobs is a big deal. I get to have fun while I do it. My parents did it because they had to. And so I'm no better than them. They're way smarter than me. And so I'm not doing anything special. I remember talking with them. They were like, man, my brother's my business partner, and they're like, oh, you guys are doing such amazing work. We're so proud of you. You guys are doing such hard work. And it was like, you guys did the hard work. This is us just continuing the process. And so we really respect people's ability to invest because of that, because it's not easy. We're not, we didn't come up, we weren't poor. I like to say we were broke, we weren't poor. We had a lot of love in our house. I'm a big guy. I never, wasn't missed a meal. And so my dad worked hard, my mom worked hard, my siblings all work hard. um, but then you learn about this thing of your money working for you. And so, it's not to say that as we bring in more money, we're working less hard. We're doing it differently, right? We're letting the money do some of the hard labor. And that's something that's really difficult for people to shift in their mind. And so, again, it takes time. We meet a lot of people that are just fearful. I have people sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash that are like, they come from communist regimes where their money was just taken out, so they leave it in their house. Or they're afraid to invest it because they were swindled at some point. And so we never want to convince people. I don't want to convince people to invest. I want to instruct them. And then when it's time, when they realize that it's a good thing on their own, hey, I'm here, great. And part of that is having the W-2, right? It's knowing that this is not my main source of income. It's, for me, the money I make, I just reinvest. And, as I study other investors, just finished Warren Buffett's biography. And one of the things that he talks about is, to not interrupt compounding. So it's just put it back in, put it back in, put it back in. And the more that that grows, then you get that hockey stick growth. And so,
Hmm.
in my business, on the business side, with my W-2, I do manage large teams, to go into the hundreds of people. And so I learned a lot of process there. So, for us, I'm told that I'm a weird one because when I started my business, I had a business plan. I literally drew it out. Year one, we were launching the company. Year two was to be in the black, and year three was to be profitable. And we've hit those metrics. And so, again, as we continue to move on, it's like it's the understanding that we're not a flash in the pan. We don't want to do this one time and be done. Our growth is measured. It's on purpose. My partner, he's an engineer, so he's even more of a nerd than I am. As much as I like data, he goes in deeper. And so, the one cool thing, or one of the cool things, is as we do the syndications, we've been able to meet some really smart people and learn from them and grow with them and teach them also the skills that we have. So it's a good vibe that we have going on. So I've been pleased with where we are.
That's awesome. And at least from where I'm standing, all the way over here, studying you from the LinkedIn world, um, I'd say you're extremely successful. To me, your posts are always very interesting. They're very educational. I love your thesis of trying to teach first generation immigrants to kind of like not do what they've been taught and say there's a different paths. And so, the huge kudos to you. And even though, yeah, you're working your two jobs, you're a super successful entrepreneur, at least in my eyes. And I think it shows.
I appreciate it. Again, I'll say this: the biggest success that we have is that we're doing this, and our families are all very well intact. We all have, my brother, myself, very happily married. I just hit 20 years with my wife. We're very close with our siblings, our nieces and nephews, and that's something that I see people kind of put on the back burner, and that's never been an option for us. And we've, when we were building the business, it was like, all right, if this thing gets in the way of our family or each other, we'll tuck it away. It doesn't need to be like that. And so, again, I think there's honoring each other in that and understanding the different stresses that we have. Um, the successes. I can post whatever I want, right? Like I mentioned, 360 doors, 36 million AUM doesn't mean anything, right? Those are big flashy numbers.
Right.
There's
Right.
there's someone that I follow, that's been a mentor to me, is Sandhya Seshadri, and she talks about those flashy numbers, and I always put that caveat, like that doesn't really mean much. It's all about what your processes are. Really what the longevity is, the staying power. Because if you think that you're going to do this for a couple of years and retire, I was on a panel yesterday, and a lot of the people there have W-2s, and it's like, hey, this is a
Yeah.
grind. It's not for everyone. Again, we have passive investors who don't want to do it, and that's perfectly fine, and that's great. But if you're going to be an active investor, it takes time, effort, frustration, energy, an ability to pivot and to roll with the punches and work with people you don't necessarily like, and all that stuff. But it is fun. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy it.
Good. I love your personality and I love your outlook that you have in life, which is really, really awesome. So, you and your brother started the company, with a specific goal, and you have your business plan, and, you have the different metrics that you're willing to, that you have set so you can meet. A lot of people will look at you as an entrepreneur, and, I'm not saying that everybody does this, but most people, they'll say, okay, so he's an entrepreneur. He's after, get rid of his W 2 and just do this 100% of the time so he can be wealthy and rich and all that stuff, right? I know the reality is that it's not true, right? The reality is that, and I think that's a myth, it's a myth. A lot of people think that you can magically just have passive income coming your way. But you're an excellent example of like, no, you also need some active income coming in so you can then have the passive income, right? Um, what would be a myth about money or financial success that you've heard that you would like to debunk?
So I think it's a great question. I think the longer I do this, the more I respect cash flow, right? And so I have a good job, right? There are times that as I was growing the business, I needed to pull from my income, my W-2 income, to supply funds for the company, and we're at a place where I don't have to do that anymore, which is phenomenal, right? And that was part of the growth plan. Um, but you know, I know several people that have been affected by layoffs, and when it stops coming in, it's abrupt, right? You know, that free flow of cash, you know, and again, we have cash flowing investments. We get what they call it mailbox money. Um, but the reality is, you know, life is expensive. You know, my insurance, my personal house just went up, and I'm like, man,
You're in
it's
Florida,
no,
so
yeah, I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to buy another property just to pay for the insurance. You know, and so you know, the reality is that cash flow is the thing that greases the wheels. You know, I have the ability right now to hold off, right? I don't use the cash flow for my investments for my life right now. It's just building, you know, building the next, you know, the next investment. But the reality is that you know, if you're going to take that leap, again, on that panel we were on yesterday, we were talking a lot about people that have left the W-2 and then had to come back. And it's you know, one of the people was talking about, hey, it's okay, like you don't have to feel like a failure.
right.
um and you know, I have a specific situation where, you know, my wife has some health issues, and so one of the big things that has kept me at my job in the past was my health insurance. And so you know, as an entrepreneur, you know, if you try to get that insurance in the open market, it's tough. And so you know, that was one of the reasons that I said I also thoroughly enjoy my job. Like I have a lot of fun. I don't go a day without laughing really hard at something. I work with an amazing group of people. And so I don't have that draw or that drive to leave. You know, I can understand people that do, but I'm thankful that I don't. Um, you know, I might work a little bit too much, but it's because I enjoy it. It's not because, you know, I have to. It's I get to, and then I like it so much that I, you know, started another company.
No, which is I think is great. And again, it goes towards the myth, right, that people have that they are an entrepreneur, buy a business, start a business, and are instantly wealthy, right? You have your company now for I believe it's almost 2.5 years, right, or 3 years. You guys are
Yeah,
going.
we'll be 3 years in the summer. Yeah.
Okay, so what will be some of the, let's see, I don't want to say failures, but one of some of the opportunities that you guys encounter when you guys were creating your company?
So I'll say that again, cash flow, right? You know, we were decently funded, I thought, right? But the startup cost, even for the type of building, the type of business we were building, you know, there was, you know, into the tens of thousands of dollars for, you know, all the LLCs we needed to create. You know, obviously the down payments for the properties and the insurance, and you know, the renovations that needed to happen, all that stuff. You know, we did run into one property that went a little long in the tooth, right? And that thankfully we had, you know, we had enough capital to get through it, but it was uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable for a while, where you're like, okay, now the floorboards, you know, need to be changed. Okay, the trussing and the roof is, man, we should have walked that with a contractor. You know, we didn't walk it with a contractor. You know, we should have gotten better eyes on it. You know, understanding the softness of certain markets, right? You know, we started a business at a really bad time, which was in 2021, which was right at the end of COVID. So you know, but again, real estate moves at a pace that you make that up, right? If you can stay in long enough, you're going to make it up. And so that's something that we realized pretty early on. And then understanding cash flow. All of our assets cash flowed when we bought them. You know, we're not going to get into to assets that are not doing that. That's one of our criteria. And it's not to say that that's a bad move, right? There's people that have long money and they can wait 10 years. And Miami is
Right.
a great place if you can wait 10 years, but we can't wait 10 years, you know? And maybe one day we can wait 10 years, but we are not doing that right now. And so, you know, one thing that um you know, that we tell people is like, hey, just really study the markets that you're in. You know, something as simple as knowing that I didn't want to invest really close to Miami because it would take a lot of my time. Again, I like to obsess over things, so I know that if I had a property nearby, I would be at it 2 3 times a week.
Wow.
The cost of gas, the cost of, you know, my time being there.
Yep.
So we have managers that manage the properties. You know, we get to function really more on data. We let the experts do what they do. And so you know, I know a couple of people that own properties that they self-manage. Again, they're small investors. And I say small in that they have like a single family home or a duplex, not that they're small thinkers. Um, and yeah, they get more money, but they have stresses that I don't. right? And we manage many more doors, because we're building systems, right? So our goal is to continue to acquire, you know, these large multifamily properties, and we've hit a groove with a really good team. And so, you know, we closed on some properties, or on a property, um, yesterday. I can't really divulge because it's a 506B, but we did close on a property. And so, you know, that's when you get the right team, you realize how important it is to have that right team when you're building these things out, when you're in the operation stage. Because in syndications, and again, the big myth is that the money's rolling in. You get money when you close, you get a little bit of money while you manage, and then money when you sell. And that little bit of money when you manage, that's that's enough to make some noise in your house, but not much, depending on your split. How much did you raise? What are you doing as far as the GP is concerned? You know, are you asset managing and or any other of the roles? And so, I think that people, you see a lot of the flash, and you got to be careful with it. I'm very open about that. And as we began to invest in debt funds, very transparent with the investors on what we're doing, and even the rates or the interest rates that are being charged, our fees. We like to be upfront about all that stuff. And so, yeah, I agree. There's a lot of you hope it's not misguided information, right? You hope people aren't trying to sell the flash. And it's fun to talk about the flashy stuff, but the reality is, sometimes I'm up before everyone and I'm asleep after everyone. I'm working on a Saturday. But my career in media has also trained me and my family to be okay with that. We don't have kids, so when I'm home, I'm with my wife, and she has my attention. She's my best friend. We get to spend a lot of time together, and because of her health, we grew old together fast. So we weren't really bogged down with a lot of like trying to be, keep up with the Joneses. We're dealing with
Right.
her health, and so that took a lot of time. Where we're just falling in love for 20 years, for another 20 years. And so, take care of your marriage. Take care of your families. Like, that's really where the rubber meets the road. As life happens, these buildings, they'll come and go, but your family, your friends, it's important to understand that, that's not, I mean, for me, right? Some people, yes, but for me, it's not worth the sacrifice of anything, to get any amount of dollars.
Well, I really love your honesty. That a lot of people need to hear that, because there's a lot of I think it's a myth, but I know the reality is it's a lot of work, right? Especially with a lot of the syndications and the GPs and stuff like that. That a lot of these men and women, people are putting in a lot of work. And yeah, you can say you're part owner or owner of a multi-apartment building. Sounds awesome, you know but a lot of people don't realize it, and I'm glad that you share that, because people think it's a lot of flashiness, right? And I love the fact that you layered that with your first passion, which is your wife and her health and your family. I like that, because a lot of people need to remember that sometimes you need to have your priorities straight. When you're putting your face in your nose on the grindstone, and you all you do is just work, 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 you have collateral damage, right? And that's not good. So thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that.
and I think the amount of work that our families had to do when they first came to this country maybe didn't allow for that all the time. Like I'm able to spend a lot of time with my father as he's retired, but he was working 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, and he traveled a ton. And so, I mean, he was always a great provider, but he wasn't able to be there to teach me to ride a bike, how to shave, how to drive. And so, but we always saw that my mom did a really good job of like making sure that he was well known, well respected in the house, and he cared for us a lot, and he tried to provide things that he could. But there was a cost. There was a collateral damage. I tell people, yeah, I could make more money tomorrow. I don't think I could make more money tomorrow and have the family I have, and I'm not willing to sacrifice that. And that's a reality that everyone has to come to terms with. What are you willing to give up? I'm willing to give up, some stuff, right? I don't know what the new movies are sometimes. I don't know what the score of the game is, or who did what. And I'm a big sports fan, and there's time for it, right? I mean, I sit down and I watch.
Yeah.
I love college football. I had a blast watching the World Series. But as much as I used to watch basketball, or go outside and you know play soccer or whatever, that some of that stuff is put on the back burner. I don't read as much as I would like to, fiction books, but you know all that in a balance, right? And there's people that talk about, there's no room for balance, and to a degree, I agree with that. In that, if you're gonna do this thing, you have to be focused on it, because things, you're dealing with large amounts of money, and so if you get your eyes off of something, that pretty quickly. Um, so that's why I have a partner, right? Because I don't have to do everything. And then on the syndications, I like the syndication model because of the teams, and so if I can't make a call, it's okay. There's someone else on the call. There's someone who's in charge of recording the calls and posting it and sending it to the team and saying, hey, this was last week's call or yesterday's call. Make sure you listen to it. And I can listen to it at 2 in the morning if I want, or I can listen to it on my way to work. And so um, partnerships are important. You get to learn from a lot of other people's experiences. I'm a big believer in partnerships, and I learned that in the field that I'm in. Teamwork is really what makes these things move. And so even as we JV, there's different specialties that each person has. And so there's a way to do it. And that's another thing. I think one myth is that it's harder than it really is. If you're willing to put in the work, there's someone that has money that doesn't want to work, right? And you find that person that can be a good mix.
Very well stated. Once again, you're just full of one-liners. I love it. You're you got so much knowledge. I knew you were going to be perfect for our conversation. This is great. So, in regards to different myths that people have, um, and the discussion about money, right? What would you say people need to learn about financing and how to handle your finances and investing? What would be your recommendation?
So I think that doing well in your finances starts very early, right? And that's probably the thing that most first gen investors, and when we talk about first gen investors, we're not talking necessarily about first generation immigrants. We're talking about people that are investing for the first time, right?
Gotcha.
Just
Thank you.
because people were born here doesn't mean they have those conversations. I know plenty of people who have been here for generations that don't know about investing, right? And so they throw all their money at something that they think is right. There's no analysis, there's no data behind it. And so we really try to, just sit down with them and say, hey, something as simple, one of the guys that invested with us, he's from Las Vegas, and he had never done any kind of investing. And he's between investing in this or that. And so we started talking about short-term loans, right? And I was like, look, you can do short-term loans, and he's like, oh, what returns can I get? You can get 8 to 12%. And he's like, wow, that's crazy. He put in $100,000. He got an 8% return for his first investment, and he was super happy with that. And so that's a first gen investor. His parents never did that. That's the first time anyone in his life had ever done anything like that. And so he gained a little bit of confidence, a little bit of knowledge, and he's on to the next thing. And so we're proud of that, right? And I love when people, when an investment doesn't work, when we're walking someone through an investment, we're looking at a portfolio or something, and they're like, oh, this doesn't work. So when they tell me no, man, I'm super happy. When I tell them, when I tell them this is not a good investment for you, I don't think, we're not financial planners, we're not, but to help them understand, hey, the metrics should be around here, and you should be looking out for these things. And so but everybody has an ability to do that, and you don't have to be 40 years old. I was talking with my nephew, he's 18 years old. We were talking about different forms of investing, whether it's through an IRA or a permanent life insurance policy. And he's excited. I said, look, the best investments are the ones that you have to be disciplined with, not the ones that you have to be smart for. There's investments where you put 100, $200 a month, you're gonna be 65 with a couple million bucks in the bank.
Yep.
And so just even that, like that I think is important. You have to create a habit of that, right? So we have like 3 pillars. So we talk about educate, grow, give, right? We help educate the first gen investor to grow their finances so that they can give to the people and the charities that are important to them. And so those 3 things are habits, right? Your education should be a habit, your growth should be a habit, and your giving should be a habit. And so if you learn that and you start doing that at a young age, and I'm talking even before you're 18, you have a life that is going to be just fraught with opportunities, because you're looking for those things to educate yourself, to grow, whether it is your finances, your mindset, your relationships, and then to give. And so I'm really appreciative of the way we were raised. Those things weren't necessarily painted like that, right? That was just you got to come up with a catchy thing. But my parents were like that. My father was a very curious person, right? I mean, he didn't get out of 10th grade, and he was engineering. I mean, he's an engineer, and so
Nice.
he taught himself AutoCAD when he was like 60, and so he's one of the smartest people I ever met. My mother, when she taught us about giving, they didn't have money, but every year they scrounged $1,000 and they sent money back to Colombia to build homes for homeless people. And so and then the growth was always like, all right, how can we do more for each other, for others around us? And so those themes have been very important in my life and in my brother's life. And a lot of the people that invest with us, we help them realize those things. And it's important to know that those are habits that you can build your life around. And they're not just doing with money, but the realities are you get joy in doing those things and learning and being able to grow and to give.
So with your investment thesis, the component of the education, right, and the growth, how would you go out and educate non-investors, the people who are like regular people are on the street? So I'll give you a quick example. So I've worked in healthcare for 24 years, and the frustrating thing that I encountered, right, was sometimes with high income earners, or with just people, they have the mentality, right? Society, let's say, says you have to go to school, get an education, um, get in huge amounts of debt because of universities. But that's my own personal pet peeve with what they do because of the higher learning. So that's a whole different podcast. And
I'll
work,
go.
work,
I'll go
work.
on. I'll go on that one too. I'll go on that one too.
Okay, because oh my god, this is horrible. I see some of my therapists and my doctors that are 300, $500,000 in debt. Is like, Jesus, this is. Anyways, so they're taught that, right? You work, 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 and then you retire, right? There is no financial education, and that's been my thing. Is like, how can we reach out, or how can we get the message out to the people? So with your expertise and your education, how would you teach, not necessarily your specific investors, right, but like the people that are just kind of like you're talking about your nephew, how
Yeah.
that kind of generation, what would you tell them?
Yeah. So um, I remember sitting around with them, and I have 13 nieces and nephews, and the oldest of them is 26. So we get to have like really fun conversations on like finances and economies and politics and all this stuff, right? I've always had great conversations with them. Um, but at that generational level, it's listening, right? I listen to what they say a lot, and the concerns that they have. But man, I can't afford a house, and I'm like, you can't afford a house in Manhattan, working
Right.
40 hours a week, right? They're like, I can't even rent an apartment. And I said, look, I'll give you a little bit of my example. When I got married, my wife got very sick right before we got married. I was working 80 to 100 hours a week
Oh,
to afford a one-bedroom apartment. Minimum wage at that time was, I don't know, $5, right? I was making more than that, but that's what it took. And so I said, you're making what, 17, $20 an hour? Yeah. If you work 80 to 100 hours a week, you can afford a one-bedroom apartment. You're not that far off. The problem is that you have a lot of distractions. And so, if you're willing to put in the work, right? Nothing in life is owed to us, right? We get here and we're not owed anything. Um, and so, those are a good group of like young adults there, and so they understood. Now the reality is, you don't have to go that route, right? I didn't go to concerts when I was in my 20s. I never had less than 3 jobs in my 20s. I didn't go to concerts. I didn't, travel much. I didn't, because the situation that I was in when I first got married was I had a sick wife, and so that was
right.
my priority. Um, I'm blessed by that because I didn't, I remember when it was time to buy a house, I couldn't afford one, so we rented an apartment, and I was a little bit bummed out, right? I was bothered. Um, I remember this was when they were giving away money in 2000, 2003, 2004. And
Right.
I read the loan, right? So I went to the guy. He's like, "Oh, you can afford a $300,000 home." And I was like, "Let me just take this. I don't know anything. Let me just take this." And I read it. 30 minutes. I was like, "This is crazy." And I look at who's my fiance. I said, If we have $500,000 in 5 years, we'll never have to work again. People are going to lose their shirts. So I went from being bummed out that I was, because I knew I made more money than other people. I'm like, how's that guy affording that house? He couldn't. So then 2008, 2009 rolls around.
Yep.
That guy is now underwater $200,000. I don't have $200,000 of debt. So I'm ahead. And so it's learning the fundamentals, right? Like what works. You should be spending about 30% of your income on your housing. You shouldn't be spending 60 or 70 or 80%. Just something as simple as that. And you have those conversations. You should not be spending $1,000 on your car, right? And all of these habits, right? I remember I had a cousin that, my brother was getting married. His little cousin, he comes in and he's all like sweaty from his car that doesn't have air conditioning in South Florida. And my mom's like, "Oh, poor thing." I said, "No, that builds character. You should have a car when you're a kid that doesn't have AC. It builds character. You're gonna appreciate the one that does." And he's doing great. He's, I don't know, 30 years old, great job. Those things build character. And so it's building the habit, like understanding, and there's people around you, right? And we're trying to normalize that conversation for people that, now I can talk to my nieces, my nephews, my little cousins, the investors. We talk with their kids a lot, right? It's like, hey, they want to bring their kids into the conversation, and when a child hears that their parent cannot invest with us because they have $30,000 in credit card, then we say, hey, your best money is going to be served in taking down that 25% interest credit card.
Right.
Have an opportunity. You definitely have an opportunity to invest with us a year or two, and so having those conversations with families, like I'm not going to take an investor that their spouse is not on board. It's not going to happen because there's other issues there. We don't need it. I don't need any of this. I have a good job. I'm good. This is genuinely from how do we help people? And so, so at that age, you have those conversations and building good habits when they're young. And then at my age, it's, hey, you really need to, I deal a lot with people who are starting to like look at their retirement and they're having like this oh no moment, right? Because I had it. I'm like, I can't retire with the money I have. And I'm not going to get that money in a year. I need 20, 30 years to get there.
Right.
And so as I started looking at ways to get there, we talk a lot about moving in the fear, right? So we say, I don't know how to get over there, but I know how to take this next step. And then I take the next step. So we do a series of the next steps. You do that 10 times, you're 10 steps down the road. And so again, it's more of a disciplined approach. It's helping them see what that next step is. Is it just breaking the mold of I need to invest in something, right? But I'm not telling you, don't put all your eggs in one basket. I have different ideas on diversification, but the idea of like, hey, let's just break that mental barrier. And they go in and they do, they get 7-8% off of a short-term loan to someone. Wow, I made money. I didn't even have to work for it. Yeah. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. And so it's just really helping walk people through. Again, we grow slow, we grow less, but we grow right. Like, and our goal is to help as many people as possible.
So you mentioned something about your thoughts about diversification. What is that? Sounds like you're kind of different than everybody else. That sounds interesting.
Yeah. So I've been reading more on Buffett and Munger, and they have interesting thoughts where they don't believe in diversification, spreading your eggs around. So Munger talks about, he's like, you probably have like 10 opportunities in your life to make the right investment. And so he says that he would prefer where if you're in college and your professor gives you a ticket, he says you're gonna make 20 investments in your life, and every time you make an investment, you have to punch a hole in that ticket. How different would your investment strategy be, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's really understanding what you're getting into and then go big, right? And so for us, we know that real estate is good, right? We know that there's tax benefits and a hedge against inflation. We also like the social aspect of, we're not slumlords, right? We fix up the units and we make sure people are okay. We work with people, the people that can't, that are being irresponsible. We don't. It's not fair to everyone else, and so there's that. But when I started learning about like debt funds, right? I was like, okay, what is a debt fund? Have people around me that have done it for a while, educated myself, and so now we push in. It's all right. Let's take these things, let's learn about them, and then we push in. It's not, I tried Bitcoin or whatever cryptocurrencies, and I have nothing against it. I just don't understand it. So
Sure.
I threw, I don't know,
Sure.
$700 to it. Threw $700 to it, lost my $700. I was like, all right, I'm done. I don't want to wake up at 4 in the morning and go, so I don't go back to sleep. It was
Okay.
it was not my thing, right? That was the worst like sleep I got in months, in those months. And so, but it's just really understanding what you're getting yourself into, understanding who you are as a person, understanding your risk tolerance, and then go in, right? If there's a company that you've been, Charlie Munger was talking about, he studied companies for 10 years. I guess a billionaire,
Yep.
and he's taking his
Yep.
time, and then you're getting those asymmetrical returns on a handful of your stocks. But the reality is all the other ones are not so great, right? And even the S&P 500, it's over indexed on a handful of stocks that pick it up. Everything else is not that great. And so if you can find these, do those heavily. Why put more money here? And so um the more I learn about those that do it well, the more I'm understanding that diversification is, I can be agnostic to the asset class as long as I can understand it. But the realities are, once I find the thing that works, I should go heavily into it. I shouldn't like just kind of mess around and put a couple bucks there. No, if I understand it, trust my gut, the fundamentals that I have, the amount of sleep that I want to get with that, So yeah, I'm not hyper diversified in the traditional sense. My partner, we said, look, we'll never offer more than 4 things at any given time. Like that's our number. We've never done more than 3, but 4 is like stretching it. We've never had more than 3, and I'll never go over 4.
That's actually,
Your
thank you
question, if
for sharing
came in
that.
or out.
Yeah, no, you did. You answered that greatly, and I really thank you for it, because the people always think about, they're taught, need to diversify, right? And do this and do that. And like you said, there's sometimes they're spread out too thin, and they don't know where they're at. Um, so that's actually really interesting, looking at it like maybe 10, 20 opportunities in your lifespan that you need to really invest. That's punch your ticket. I like that. Um, I have 2 more questions, because I want to respect your time. I want to be fair to you. So I was saying that you have a lot of your passion is your family, right? And the love for your jobs and stuff
Cool.
like that.
Let's do it.
So um, how would you describe the balance of enjoying your life while still planning for your future?
Plan for my future, but I fully enjoy my present. Like I enjoy my life. You know, the thing that the only thing I would change about my life, honestly, is my wife's health. That's it. I enjoy the time I get to spend with my parents. I would like to do that more. I enjoy the time I get to spend with my siblings and the kids and all that stuff. I would like to do that more. But I enjoy my job. I enjoy what I do. And I think the Lord has blessed me in that. And with kind of the people that I need, I get more of what I need than what I want. And that has always balanced out. But I thoroughly enjoy my existence, and I think people need to understand that. Like the joy, you don't get to the joy. You need to live the joy now, because we're not guaranteed tomorrow. And so, but we have to plan for tomorrow, right? Plan like you're gonna live on but enjoy today. And so that helps me make decisions that are not necessarily easy, right? There are times where I want to work more, and I say, there's things to get done for the business. But I decide to just watch a show with my wife, or to, I don't know, go for a drive or go to see my parents. And so you got to make those decisions, right? I think a lot of people let life happen to them, and they don't realize how much of a role we should take in our lives. And so I take that seriously. I try to not take myself too seriously, but I enjoy the present and I plan for the future.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. And final question: what would be a piece of advice that you would give to somebody who is just starting out as an entrepreneur?
So the piece of advice that I would give people that are considering entrepreneurship, one is to really study yourself, right? And um, to understand the things that you enjoy. I don't think that you need to necessarily be passionate about the thing you're an entrepreneur in. I think passion is a fake thing, because that comes and goes. And so I'm not particularly passionate about real estate. It's a thing that I understand. right? It's a thing that I know that I can learn and continue to learn more about. And it's okay because, and I prefer it because if a deal doesn't look good, I don't need to be passionate about that deal, right? There are things that I like about a deal, things I don't like about a deal. Um, and the longer I do this, and we've talked about it with my partner, the thing that we are passionate about is people. And so when we're doing something, whether it's real estate or a debt fund or teaching someone something, it's really more centered around people. And so we have this mantra that says we take care of our tenants, we take care of the property managers, we take care of the investors, everything, all of that takes care of us. And so it's all around people. Um, and then to really understand that the entrepreneurial life, it's not easy. And if it was easy, everyone would do it. But the reality is, if you're disciplined about it, if you get some mentorship, get someone who can speak into your life a little bit, learn from others' mistakes, read books, you can do it. Most businesses fail for a lack of capital and a lack of just staying power. And it's okay, like, to cut your losses and say, I don't like this thing. It's not working out for me or my family. Walk away. Fine. You're not a failure. Some people,
Right.
it's not for everyone, right? Go work at a job 9 to 5. I work a job, right? And I enjoy it. And I happen to be an entrepreneur. And, there's other things that I will do. There's other industries that I'm looking at that I enjoy. I enjoy a lot of technical stuff and creative stuff. And so, you see people that do this entrepreneurial life a million times and they just love doing it. Great.
Yep.
But grit, processes processes are huge because again, the desire won't always be there, but if you're disciplined, you will have a better chance of success.
Thank you. That is so awesome. That's very well stated because a lot of people don't want to hear that. That they
Yeah.
think it's just pay some dude $20,000 and then they're rich in 2 weeks. And thank you for being honest and letting people know that it's not as easy as it sounds. It's not as glamorous as it sounds, but it can
Yeah.
be very glamorous as long as you put in the work, right?
Yeah, yeah, and the real and going back to the diversification play, we all learn things, and sometimes we take our eyes off of that. Right when things are about to go really well, we move to the next thing,
Yeah.
and right when things are about to go, you move to the other thing, and it's like, poof, you just missed it. Become an expert. Become a master at the thing, right? Whatever the business is, I should not be willing to throw away everything I've learned in real estate because this next flashy thing popped up, right? You build on that, right? And the name of the company is, building that. It's a foundation to continue to build, and you have a solid foundation for the mastery of making your money grow.
That's awesome. And you are a very wise person and you have a lot of good nuggets of information. I really thank you.
I
Um,
appreciate that.
thank you so much for being on my little podcast and sharing your knowledge because it was very educational. I really, really enjoyed this time. And we'll see each other again in the next episode.
Appreciate it. Thanks.